Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another exciting episode of Caught on the Mic. I am Michael Clark. Humanity and personification. Those are two themes that are reoccurring in this podcast, and I couldn't be any more proud of that fact. I love having the opportunity to interview people that I find personal parallels with. Chad Jensen of the band Bridge the Gap is definitely one of those people. I cannot wait for you to listen to this story, and I'll kind of give a little bit of backstory to it. Bridge the Gap was previously another band that existed from the late 90s until 2005. 2005 hit, they had a lot of life responsibilities occur. Does this sound familiar? And they ended their tenure as a band. In the early portion of the pandemic years, the early 2020s, the guys got back together and started writing new music. They've already released one album and they have a second album on the way, Gainsayer, both produced by the legendary and iconic Bill Stevenson of the Descendents. I'm excited for you to hear this story. More importantly, I'm excited for you to hear the tracks off the album Gainsayer. I absolutely love them. Chad Jensen, Bridge the Gap, joins me on the podcast today. As always, listener and viewer discretion is advised. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another exciting episode of Caught on the Mic. I am with Chad from the band Bridge the Gap, a band based out of Salt Lake City, Utah. They've got a new album coming out in April, produced by the one, the only Bill Stevenson of the Descendents and all. Chad, how the heck are you, man?
Mike, I'm doing so good, man. I've been looking forward to this. Thanks for having me.
Dude, I've been stoked as well. Like, your publicist sent me your music and I hadn't heard you guys before. And I don't want to offend you, and I hope I don't, but I'm an old school Bad Religion fan. So when I heard you guys, I had Bad Religion vibes, and I'm like, oh shit, yes, I want these guys on my show for sure.
Well, Bad Religion is, in fact, the greatest and best band in the world. So we're sharing a brain there.
I love it. I love it. So how stoked are you to get this new album, Gainsayer, out into the world?
Dude, so stoked and just impatient because we actually, by the time this thing comes out, we'll have been out of the studio 13 months. It's been in the can basically since the end of March 24. And the reason it took so long to kind of get it out is we took our time finding the right label teams on this one, and that just took a little bit longer than we would have preferred ideally, but good things come to those who wait, and we ended up with a great partnership with Double Helix and Spam and P, so it all worked out. But yeah, dude, we're like chomping in the bit. We're so sick of sitting on this thing, you know?
Right. Do you ever find that whenever you've had material in the can for so long, you start worrying about writing too much new material, that you bury the thing that you're trying to promote?
Dude, that's a constant battle for me, just because like I'm always writing. I'm not always trying to write, but
Right.
stuff is always coming. So like I have to try and pace myself a little bit. And it's been a lot harder on this one because so much time has passed. But like for us, and I don't want this to diminish our excitement over the music, but like this album now feels like old news to us. You know, we recorded it over a year ago. We've been sitting with the songs for even longer than that. And so what excites us is that we finally get to share it with our fans and with the world and, you know, that whole thing. But yeah, dude, we've been busy.
As an old school band guy myself, that was a battle that I always faced as well. It's like you put an album, you wrap it up, you've got it mixed, you've got it mastered, you're waiting to press it, you're waiting for the CD or album release parties, you're waiting for your whole marketing plan, and by the time it actually comes out, you might have a whole other album written and ready to go. And I don't know about you, but I've always worked with guys that are always like, new material is the best material. Let's play the new stuff. Let's play the new stuff. And it's like, guys, slow your fucking roll. We got to promote this other stuff still too. You know what I mean?
Totally. I know, dude. I live that. I mean, that's exactly how it is for me in particular, and for us. But yeah, dude, I definitely feel you. We got a lot more in the can too. I mean, I've probably like written, I don't know, 10 or 12 songs since we left the studio. And then I have a file of about 70 songs that I've demoed over the last like 3 years. And so that's what we did like on Gainsayer. The upcoming record is, I just went through and was like, okay, I demoed this one, but with a slight favoritism, like you said, to the newer batch, so to speak. But it's funny how that works.
Always, always. So without any further ado, for those that might not be familiar with who Bridge the Gap is, let's talk a little bit about your origin story, how you guys came together, and what brought you from then until now.
So we all are from the same little hometown in southern Utah called St. George, and it's right on the border of Utah, Arizona, and Nevada. And so we were actually geographically a lot closer to Vegas than we were, say, Salt Lake City. And so growing up, it wasn't a small town, but I don't know, 150, 200,000 people, kind of a college town, actually. But so, we're all from that town. We formed bands, played together, created a scene in the early and mid 90s. And then, what we eventually all kind of came together and joined forces, and we had a band called Unfold that went from like 97 through about 2005 is when we hung it up. And we did a lot. Like we toured, we put out an album and an EP, played on the Warped Tour a couple times. And about 2005, we kind of, I don't know, got sick of it and went our separate ways. And we all, started families eventually, and careers and businesses and whatnot. And then around 2020, and it honestly had nothing to do with the pandemic for what it's worth. But in around 2020, I started getting really interested in gear and learning about gear, because my whole life had just put a guitar in my hands. Like I struggled to even restring a guitar for most of my life, no lie. And so I started getting interested in gear, and then I was like, hey, I want to figure out how to home record so I can demo these songs I write all the time and at least send them to my friends and to the dudes, from the band. And so that's what I did. And then, the dudes eventually feedback, they're like, dude, we should do something with this. And then we hatched a plan, dude, to go record a record at the blasting room, so we went from 0 to 60 because the standard and the expectation and the level of proficiency and just having your shit togetherness to hang in the blasting room. So that was a nice little wake up call, but it all came out in the wash and worked out.
Yes. Yeah. How different is it for you now versus the first time around? Because everything has changed between streaming, social media, marketing, how you release music. Like, did it take the wind out of your sails at all?
It's really a double-edged sword, dude, because in one sense, it's never been easier to reach people and new fans, and there are far less gatekeepers, so to speak. But what's happened is, even though the number of gatekeepers has diminished, it's consolidated, and there's still a lot of gatekeepers. And so anyway, learning the whole digital thing has been a little bit of a trick, but I would say and like a rapid education, but I would say that really for us, the biggest difference is when we were kids, we were playing punk rock. We never had it in our heads that we were going to be, Van Halen rock stars or anything.
Right.
But when we were kids, we were grinding for the dream. And the dream is defined by us as 19, 20-year-old kids or whatever, was if we could, kind of like Tenacious D, if we could pay the rent with our rock, we'd have it made. Whereas now it's like, the only reason we even started doing it again, I mean, back then, of course, passion is what, and like artistry and the whole thing was why we got started it in the beginning. But now the only reason we came back together was for the joy and fun and passion of creating music together, recording it, playing together, and the enjoyment and fulfillment that we get out of that. And we haven't really attached any expectations to it. And so, that's partly a result of our age.
Hmm.
We're all in our early 40s. And so, your perspective matures, and your realistic expectation of what's actually possible uh, kind of comes to a more crystallized fore, so to speak. And really for us, because we're all dads, we have businesses, we have families, we have jobs, careers, whatever. So bridge the gap is something we do purely for the fun, for the enjoyment, and fortunately it's good enough to where, like, it's we can do some stuff with it, and we go out and we play. And but none of us are trying to go, jump on a 45-day tour. That's not really where we're at as a band, what
Right.
we're trying to do. That's not to say we don't love playing and touring and all that. We do, and we do it. But it's just a more balanced approach. I guess is the best way to put it.
You know, I find it kind of ironic, a band of your genre and your style having broken up initially in 2005, right before the big MySpace boom took off. Whenever that happened, did you ever see that occur in real time and think, oh shit, if we had just kept the band going for another 2 years?
You know, the thought occurred to me like, "Oh, wow, this is cool," like, how easy it is to reach people even then, because we were in the '90s and early 2000s where every band eventually, I would say by, like, 2001, every, like, competent band that was going for it, so to speak, at least had their own independent website that you would try and drive
Yes.
fans to.
Just kind of personifying this for myself and kind of sharing a kinship with you. I played in bands from the mid 90s until 2013, and it was like existing in four different decades from that very short time span, from like 1995 to 2013, to where I saw the industry go through all sorts of really weird changes between social media, independent record labels, websites, and all of that take off. And I remember when I quit the first time, it was actually a year later than you. It was 2006. It's like first kid was on the way, and I was like, okay, can't do the band thing anymore. Like, it's time to be a grown up. Let's wrap it all up. And I spent like 9 months sitting on the couch watching Scrubs reruns, eating myself to death, going, okay, I got to get out of the house and do something. But very much like Bridge the Gap, I was like, okay, if I do this, I have to do it right.
Yeah,
It has to make sense. If I'm going to take any fraction of time away from my family, it has to be done at such a high level
right.
that it pays its own dividends. Does that make sense?
That's exactly, dude. That's exactly our mindset. So that's why, and when we come together and we do anything that has bridged the gap, man, we're organizing it and pre-planning it in a way that maximizes the bang for the buck, so to speak, because everything you do nowadays costs money. Hey, can you come to Denver for $800 or whatever? It's like, yeah, but rooms cost XYZ. When we were kids, if you'd offered us $800 to come to Denver, it would have felt like all the money in the
Right.
world. Um,
Yes.
but now it's like, yeah, that covers, you know, uh, half of the whole, well, covers the hotel room, and then, like, the gas and whatever else. So, but yeah, it's definitely a different time.
In fairness, Chad, in contrast to inflation, $800 when we were kids was all the money in the world.
Totally, dude. Yeah, I don't even know what that actually would be worth, uh, nowadays, or what the conversion rate would be, but definitely it went $800 went a lot farther back then for sure.
Well, let's talk a little bit about the album thematically. I think you've released two singles so far, In the Throes and Brothers.
Mhm.
let's kind of talk about some of the subject matter that you cover and kind of what some of your influences are in the material.
Yeah, dude. I mean, I would say the majority of the record is, there's no like specific theme to it. The majority of the record is kind of more just, I don't know, what you personal songs, whatever's, eating at me in the moment type stuff. There's a few like socioeconomic, political, whatever observation songs. Um, but it's something that I think anyone who are fans that really like Secret Combinations, our first record, um, they're gonna be stoked on how we kinda built on that because, when we got to the blasting room, I mean, we were experienced in the music, and I had a lot of time, writing songs and, you know but working with Bill Stevenson and the guys at the blasting room, I don't know, it was just such an education, I learned so much, and most of the songs that are on this record, I mentioned I have this rat hole full of songs I've demoed, but most of the songs on this one, uh, are songs that were written after we got back from doing Secret Combinations, and so I think fans will be able to, see kind of a developmental upgrade in sophistication and sonically. I mean, look, I love the way Secret Combinations sounds. It's also a blasting room record, and I love it. It's perfect in terms of the sonics and production. It's right up my alley. There's a reason we're going to the blasting room, right? Like, so many of my favorite records were done there, but this one, dude, like, there's just something about it that's a little bit denser in terms of the production quality, so it kinda helps that what I'm saying are a little bit more sophisticated songs hit a little bit harder, I think, and, when I went in to do the vocals on the first record, I had not meaningfully done vocals and sang for 15 years, and any
Right.
sync I had done up to that point was like half-assed demo vocals in my little studio room at home, and so let me tell you that you're selling yourself short if you think that that's gonna, hold water with Bill Stevenson on vocals. It was a rude awakening, my dog.
Yeah.
Like, it was brutal to a point where, like, 2 or 3 times I'm like, "Oh my gosh, like, I am wasting this man's time. This is one of my heroes, and I'm utterly wasting his time." And in those low moments, it's like, he's been doing this for so long that, like, he would always seem to kinda detect when I was in that headspace and, we'd pause and break, and he'd give me a little pick me up and, emotional lift somehow, and then I'd buckle down. But I learned so much, from Bill and what I needed to work on too coming out of that.
Right.
And I spent time on it and on the vocals, getting better as a vocalist so that when I went in the second time for Gainsayer, I think fans will be able to tell it's just the vocals are better. It's more thought out vocals, harmonies, which was another thing Bill wanted me to be more cognizant of when I was demoing the next batch. So anyway, just multiple levels of analysis. I think it's a stronger record. It's a different record, but I think our fans will love it.
I love hearing that. Are you comfortable with kind of explaining how that collaboration ended up coming about?
Oh, totally, dude. It's like it's so casual that it's almost ridiculous. And so Jeff is our guitar player on he was our guitar player in Unfold, the original band. When we got it back together, it was Jeff and I originally collaborating on these demos, and he came out a few times to my place, and we wrote a song, and then we continued demoing a bunch of stuff. And then one day, we're not kids anymore. We have a little bit better command of our resources and whatnot. And one day he's like, we're just daydreaming in my little studio, and he's like, we should do something with these. Well, if you could record an album anywhere, where would you go with this? And I'm like, dude, I don't know. The dream would be Bill and Stevenson at the Blasting Room. I did not know Bill Stevenson. And he goes, yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, maybe, yeah, that's cool. I think so too. And literally, dude, like, I don't know, 3 days later, next thing I know, I'm getting copied on email responses from Bill Stevenson and Jeff. And that quickly morphed into send me the demos. And that morphed into a phone call. And I don't. Bill didn't quite know what to make of us because it's not cheap to record at the blasting room,
Right.
and he's used to a label of some sort footing the bill, and because it's a band that's out there, touring, grinding, doing its thing, a well-honed, oiled machine, and he's talking to these two like 40-year-old dudes who just want to come make a record with Bill Stevenson. No labels paying for it. So it took him a minute to kind of wrap his brain around it, but I guess he liked the songs and he's like, yeah, or it was good enough for him, the demos, right? Whatever.
Right.
And he's like, yeah, so here's the bottom line, here's my windows, and we just booked it. And at that point is when I really um rallied and conscripted our drummer Ryan, who was also our drummer when we were kids. Like I found him when he was 16, and I had to go sit in his parents' living room and convince them to let me take their kid across state lines on tour, which they did. They let me take it. But anyway, so we got Ryan involved, and he had like a 3-week run up to learn the demos, and he did and killed it at the blasting room and at Secret Combinations. And up to that point, dude, honestly, this is the honest truth. This was when we left the blasting room the first time, as great as the experience was, it was still more of just like a project. Like it was kind of more of a
Yeah.
Chad, Jeff, Sean, Ryan, creative like thing. It wasn't until we started getting the mixes back that we went, damn, dude, we're gonna have to do something with this, guys. Like, if we put this out, we're gonna have to like be a band and play a little bit and like promote it and stuff and find a label and the rest is history, man. And so, yeah, maybe that was a long-winded way of explaining it, but
No, that was a perfect way of explaining it. I think about this world that we live in right now, this technological world. Now we could shit on it all day long. We could talk about all the evils of social media. We could sound like old grandpas and be like, well, back when we were kids, how much better everything was. But the connectivity that this world allows for now versus back then makes moments like that possible, like more times than not. Like I think I think about that in regard to even booking episodes of this podcast. I have had conversations with people that I would have only dreamed about having conversations as little as 10 years ago. But it's this synergy that's existent in the world that allows for us to be the best version of ourselves that we could possibly be. And taking that to a marketing point and a publishing point, like, how do you feel personally about the way the new music industry exists and how releasing songs exists?
man, I'm torn on it because you know, we grew so fast in our social media following and so many people, in the old days, seriously, when we were doing this before, if you wanted people to hear your music, even if you were like a signed band on an independent level, like you had to tour, you had to go
Yeah.
out and play in front of them. Um, and so nowadays it's a little bit different. Like the cart can actually come before the horse.
Yep.
And that's really the approach we took was, I mean, not to sound too corny, but like the whole if you build it, they will come thing was like, all right, we've got what we believe is a quality piece of music here and an album, and we create our social media accounts and start just trying to do some of the things that we're seeing other bands do in terms of promoting it. And it grew fast. Like our Facebook following grew to like 50,000 people in 2 years. And our Instagram, grew really fast too. And so those are blessings, so to speak, right? Those are assets and means to communicate with fans that when you and I were grinding it out back in the day was utterly unavailable to you,
Right.
and unless you were signed to a competent label. And so there's so many blessings to it, but the problem is you've got a lot of it's a cacophony of music, and so figuring out how to separate yourself in that sea of everyone's on Spotify, everyone's got a band, everyone's, and I don't say that dismissively. I'm saying that I love it. More power to and all the artists. It's so much the accessibility and all that stuff. It's there. Home recording, that proliferation has also led to the more and more music.
Yes.
Um, but it can be daunting and a little bit overwhelming. And so what we do is basically, Mike, is we stand on the music and we basically say, "Hey, look, man, if here's what this is basically we're playing we're writing and performing and recording the music that we want to hear. Like this is our interpretation of our musical tastes and then what's on our mind as artists, in our hearts. And if we like it, other people will like it. So let's just do our best to try and see if we can't help this music find its tribe." And social media has helped us do that to a great degree.
Yeah, I agree with that. It's crazy because I've had this same conversation with so many different musicians from different stages in their careers. Obviously, younger musicians, like I just had a pop star on recently, young 20-year-old girl, and she was talking about how important authenticity is to Gen Z. And that's something that maybe we don't think about,
Mm,
but you just described like to a T. You know, I mean, you are making music for yourself, and sometimes that allows for more people to have buy-in into the art that you're creating. But as far as releasing it, again, it's varying degrees of how people feel about that. Like some
yeah.
guys that were established back in the old school, they're like, I hate the way we release music now, how we trickle out songs and trickle out songs and trickle out songs. And then nobody thinks of music in terms of a whole album anymore.
Right. The one saving grace for us on that, and I refuse to ever be that band that is a single band for what it's worth.
Right.
But the one saving grace for us in that respect is that punk rock is still culturally, it's about the music, it's about the tactile, physical, like, people wanna read the lyrics. They wanna see the
Yes.
pictures in the inner sleeve, and that translates to how they also consume, to a point, it translates, I think, to how, like, people who are fans of punk rock, engage with streaming. Um, you know, of course, every album is gonna have its songs that resonate more with people or have
Hmm.
its deep, further reach or whatever. But that's the one good thing is, punk rockers, they still want the albums, you know what I mean? And like, I have a lot of buddies that I've, over the years, and then also new people since we've been doing this again, that are not in punk rock, and they stick to this like rigid, that single release thing. And it's like, man, to me, you're missing the cart for the horse. Like, that's killer if you're falling in reverse. If you've already
Right.
got this massive following and platform and a huge label supporting you and like, then yeah, dude, milk that. But like otherwise, you gotta flood the zone, in my opinion, with what, your music. And then just do the best you can to help that music reach people, honestly. Like, it sounds basic, but I'm not exactly an expert, right? I'm just telling you what my read on it has been since kind of getting back into it, whatever it was 3 years ago, 4 years ago.
So are you a physical media guy? Like, do you like vinyl and CDs and old school way of releasing things?
Oh yeah. Yeah. Oh yeah. This time around, we opted not to do CDs on Gainsayer, but just because people don't ask for them. I mean, some
Right.
do, don't get me wrong. We sold, uh, I don't remember the exact number we printed on Secret Combinations, but we sold through half of them. People do ask for it, but like I would say at a show or even with our online store and stuff, I would say like 1 out of every 10 physical music sales was somebody who asked for it on CD.
Right.
They want the vinyl. And so I love it too because I like to collect the things I care about, whether it's guitars, amps, music. I like to collect it. I like to hold on to it, look at it, touch it, the whole
Yeah.
thing, the possession aspect. And then with me, one of the things that made me like fall in love with punk rock was the lyrics. And look, pop music, there's plenty of genres and songs. It has meaning, but punk rock, even if it's not a political stance song or whatever, like I come from that Bad Religion inspired, place where the lyrics blew my mind. And so
Hmm.
and I learned so much about the world from reading Bad Religion lyrics and then memorizing them. And I could probably spit them out to you, like, name the song. I'll spit the lyrics out to you right now. Because I would, first thing, it was one of my favorite things, back when Bad Religion was still in its every 2 years release an album kind of cycle.
Right.
Man, I loved coming home with that record, putting it in, and then flipping open the lyrics and just following along, baby, for the first time. And so that translates to today's day and age too. Like if I discover a new band or an artist that I'm into, I'm gonna, and if I really like it, I'm gonna buy that physical music. And at the very least, when I'm listening the first few times, I'm reading the lyrics on, provided they're up, on Spotify or Apple or whatever. I'm trying to read along because that stuff means something to me.
I love that, man. I tell you, I sometimes wonder if there's not like a little bit of a generation gap as far as how people consume music and not. I mean, there's like I would call us Zennials, like late Gen X, early millennials, Zennials, and then there are the late millennials that I think kind of drifted away from it, drifted away from the traditional way of doing it. But this latest generation, like people like my daughter's age, my daughter's 18, she's singing in a band for the first time herself. They're
Oh,
all about physical media. Like we will go browse thrift stores and antique malls and she's buying CDs and I'm like, "What? People still buy CDs?" And she goes, "Oh yeah, all my friends are starting to get into CDs now." And I'm like, "I would that's not something that I ever would have thought would have a renaissance, you know. Vinyls make sense to me. Cassettes to a degree make sense to me. I never thought CDs would have a renaissance, but that is something that I'm kind of observing and I think is great. It's fantastic."
that's interesting. And frankly, it's very encouraging to hear that. Um, Now it makes me rethink my CD strategy on.
Oh man, I absolutely love that. So this album comes out in April. What are some long-term plans for Bridge the Gap upon release of the album?
So we will be announcing some shows, our record release show and some shows, around the West US this spring and summer to support Gainsayer. Um, we have two more singles dropping before the record, for what it's worth. I don't know if our labels would be pissed off that I said that or not, but two more kind of teasers of the record. And the songs we picked to run as singles, I think a lot of bands, and this is the way I thought, for example, on Secret Combinations was like, okay, which song is like best case, in my opinion, going to resonate with the broadest, swath of potential fans? Because we were starting from square one on that
Right.
record. But this one that we picked the singles, it was more like, hey man, which ones kind of best represent the record in their own way, where fans can listen and go, okay, there's more of this to come on the full length. And so anyway, we're stoked about that. But we'll have some shows to announce here very, very soon. If you're following us on social media, you'll get that straight.
That is your cue, ladies and gentlemen, to make sure you are following Bridge the Gap on Instagram or any social media platform out there. Man, this is pretty dope. Well, Chad, I ask as kind of a closing question, everybody. And it's really a sensitive question considering the state of the world right now. What's your advice for making the world a better place tomorrow than what it is today?
Oh man, that's tough. That's tough, man. It's such a divided, helter-skelter situation right now. Um, I'll tell you what I do is I think it's kind of like when you're in an airplane and no one listens to what the stewardess or the flight attendant, whatever, is saying. But if you actually pay attention, they tell you to take care of yourself with the flight mask before you take care of someone else in the event.
Okay, I got to cut you off for a moment. I have used that same exact analogy on probably no less than 10 episodes of this show.
See, we've been sharing a brain on more than one topic, bro. Uh,
Yeah.
and it's similar, like what they teach, you know, lifeguards, and if you're gonna save someone who's drowning, and so applying that to the world as it is like, for right now, I'll just tell you, like, I can't I'm taking care of I'm controlling my controllables, and I'm trying not to get too caught up in whatever is being said on television at night or the social media, because man, it's so extreme, and you know, it can be very overwhelming and kind of negative. So that's not to say I don't pay attention to it. I mean, I'm a father and I got to know what's going on in the world, and but I just kind of worry about my clan, so to speak. And when I can reach out and help, I'm helping on any individual level that I can. That's really it. I just try to keep it simple, bro.
I love that. It's like focus on your lane, focus on your house first before you focus on the world.
Yeah. And it's like, don't cast stones from glass houses. It's like nobody's got a perfect situation. So no one's perfect. I'm not going to go out there and preach my worldview to somebody.
Same.
Listen, as a songwriter, some of the stuff I write about are critiques of certain things, I suppose. So I don't want to sound too much like a hypocrite, but in terms of everyday life is what I'm saying. I'm not,
Right.
I'm keeping it real in that sense.
Love that. Why don't you tell my audience where they can find you online, how they can find your music, and when they can find your music?
Yeah. So, just search Bridge the Gap on Facebook, Instagram, or on TikTok. Although I got to tell you, of all the platforms, TikTok is the one to me that I don't get it. My kids do, my teens and my young, my oldest is 21 years old. I'm old, but uh, so connect with us on social. We're on all the major socials, and then find us on Spotify, and follow, because like I said, we got 2 more singles dropping, and then a 14-song banger from the Blasting Room, April 11th. So we're stoked.
Love it. Man, I am so glad that we got the opportunity to get to know each other, and I hope we stay in touch and get to do this more in the future.
Yeah, brother, this was a fun conversation. I'm glad we crossed paths. Thanks for inviting me on.
Thanks, Chad. The world is a much better place with you in it, my friend.
Oh, thanks, buddy. You too, bro.